Hi, this is Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives. So, apparently, I'm at that stage in my life where we're going to dig down deep into sexuality and just rip this thing apart. And I'm hesitant. I can definitely feel me going, what's there to talk about? But I can also feel like, oh, I'm standing at the doorstep of a giant, and I just haven't quite opened the door yet. So, this might take a little bit of me easing into it. It's going to be a process, and it might be a while. So, I live authentically. Like, this is all I do. Every time I talk about anything, it's what's going on in my own life. It's reflecting what my own journey of authenticity is, where I've been, where I'm going, and what it looks like. So I want you to imagine this. Whenever we go through life, I'm going to draw a map because I love to draw maps. When we go through life, we have basically what we know, which is the past, what's behind us, and then we have our future. And when you have your future, there is the traditional road, and then there is the great unknown. We're just going to call it the the dark abyss of fear, the unknown. And what happens is, of course, where we've been is very familiar. So we're going to call that familiar because we've been there, we've explored it, we've become the masters of our past, and we know what's there. So there's familiarity and there's security in that because we know it's knowledge. And then we're all basically funneled through the traditional road. Now, when we're funneled through the traditional road, we are told exactly what's going to be on that road. So there's no surprises. We know exactly what's on that road. We know exactly what's coming. We know exactly what to expect. The problem is the word expect. What we are told is on that road is basically a societal expectation where everyone has to look alike, act alike, and it's a societal expectation where we all wear the same Venusian mask. We all go to high school. We all go through the school process. We all have the traditional textbook teenage years. We all graduate. And if, and this is the game of life. There's this attitude of if you don't do ABC, boom, you failed. So you can check out at any time and boom, you have failed at the game of life. So there's this expectation of you have 13 years of school. And if you make it to 12th grade, you win that level. And if you don't, you have failed that level. And you do that, you get into the next stage where you're in relationships, you're doing what you need. And it's very much this expectation that it's black and white. And it's black and white because it's an extreme, because it's trauma based. So what we have aside from that is basically going on your own path. Now, we call this the land of the freelancers, the land of the entrepreneur, the land of the artist. This is where a lot of artists fall. Now, these three different roads, freelance, entrepreneur, artist, we can again kind of do some predictability. Oh, well, the artist, you're going to be a starving artist. Oh, freelance, expect to struggle. Oh, you're building your own business. So even though they are the paths less trodden, they are still filled with predictabilities. And they are also filled with a lot of shaming from the traditional road because they are considered unstable routes. And that's basically because there's this massive societal marketing campaign going on telling us that the traditional road is the safe and the right path for you because it's generic, it's traditional, and everyone's doing it, and everyone else wants us to do it so that they all have more familiarity. So the third option is that's where I'm at. And this is where I'm throwing everything out. And I've gone, you know what? I'm taking not the road least traveled. I am walking off the road and I have found a field of trees and forestry. And I've got my scythe and I'm just hacking down trees and creating my own path through the forest. That's where I am. So it kind of like bypasses this massive area of the unknown. And I have a lot of people behind me going, I want the age of authenticity too. Of course you do. Everybody does. We're all craving authenticity. No one wants to follow the Venusian mask path where you're destroying the self and you're sacrificing who you are to accommodate a bunch of people who you don't even know just to make them happy. No one really does want that, truly. That's just a lot of people are scared and that's what they're choosing. So, for those of you who want to go the age of authenticity, you don't have to go my way. You can go any way you want. However, this is how I did it. So this is just one option. And I'm taking my generic formulas. I'm showing you, hey, I discovered that this age of authenticity, this journey of authenticity is actually healing. When you decide to heal, that's actually where you're going. And there's a lot of benefits. Here they are. It's a full healing journey, an authenticity journey. It's completely stepping out of the rat race and shedding the expectations of those Venusian masks and embracing who you are. It's living in a world and in a place that is completely designed around who you are and what you want. So this is the unknown, the road of the age of authenticity. And sexuality is one of those things that comes up on this path. And it's at that point now where I can definitely feel it, and it's a huge part of it. There's a lot of I have a saying that I have always said that everything is about sex except sex. Sex is about your identity, 100% every case. And that is something I developed back in 2015 with my research. And as I developed, as I grew, as I changed, as I evolved through the stages of perspective, I kept coming back to that statement. And nope, it still checks out. It is still solid. Everything is about sex except sex. Sex is about your identity. So technically, everything is actually about your identity. It's absolutely extraordinary because that's what it keeps coming back down to is who you are. And that's really what that statement means when I say everything is about sex. Because it's all about us making it about ourselves. And sexuality is the only time where we're able to kind of sort of break away from the expectation. It's like this massive, these are the expectations has been slammed down to us. Oh, but not sexuality. Now, sexuality got its own little category, but because the rule makers were so terrified of sex, they were very vague about a lot of things. Some people came to be more controlling than others. Like when you look at the Quaker religions, when you look at some more Christian religions, where they have an exact, you can only do the missionary position. We're talking extreme control society. The flip side of all that is basically a don't ask, don't tell. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to think about it. Just sex is bad. And they put it over in that category. And they made it a taboo topic, which opens up a can of worms for a whole nother other problems. And then you have the wonderful world of BDSM, where people are bringing their shadow self into that realm. And they're finding out that, hey, they can seep out part of their identity. So what ends up happening is sexuality becomes like a pressure valve in a pressure cooker that allows you to kind of release some of that pressure when you're in a very strict environment. And it's amazing. This is such a textbook psychology thing. The more strict your upbringing, the more strict your environment, the more sexually promiscuous you are more likely to be because that allows you to have access to that pressure valve. So if you were brought up in this extremely conformist, strict atmosphere, by the time you hit 19, 20, your top is going to pop and you're just going to go all over the place, most likely because you've suppressed who you are. And then it just gets to that point where the pressure valve just completely unleashes. And then you walk away feeling guilt and shame. You compress yourself all back down again, and you vow never to do that again. Compliments of the second perspective. So with this journey, basically triadic healing breaks down all the different areas and all the different parts of triadic healing, which there's only 3 parts to it. And that's basically remembering who you are. The remembering is the stage in your healing where you basically, and you don't know you're doing this. I talk a lot about this aspect where you don't know who you are. When you start your healing, you just know that something doesn't feel right. And then about halfway through the healing journey, you have this epiphany of, oh my God, I'm putting myself back together. I had no idea who I was. And it's the sudden realization that all you've been doing through your healing is actually remembering who you are. The second stage of triadic healing focuses on understanding what was done to you. All trauma stems from a lack of understanding. I break it down in an earlier video called This Is For You. Go ahead and look for that video, and it breaks everything down beautifully. Now, if you go over to my website and you see what is Triadic Healing, I also put the video there so it's accessible. And the reason why this video is all over the place is because I break down exactly what goes on inside the subconscious mind during trauma, and how basically there is a logic loop that ends up getting the processing stuck. So you end up obsessing, ruminating over a traumatic event that gets freeze framed inside of your mind as a traumatic event, which completely rewires your nervous system, which creates an invasive perspective for you to start following. And that's all because you lack understanding, because you are stuck in a logic loop of confusion and you can't get through it. It's an absolute beautiful breakdown. So the second thing I address is the understanding. And the last part of all of this is basically training your ego to take control of your ship, training your ego that it needs to step up and become responsible for all 6 parts. Yes, 6 parts of your subconscious mind. And then to help integrate all of that, I have my integration workshop, which is Journey into the Self. That's for members only. And I do a weekly workshop on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we go in and we integrate everything. We bring it all together. I'm available for Q&A. And then we do a workshop. There's a lot involved. Inside that space, I also do communication classes. I do emotional management classes, and I do boundary setting classes. So that's also included in Journey into the Self. So when it's this all comes back to sexuality, there are stages of growth, as I described in the last video. And where this fits in the triadic healing aspect of, once you remember who you are, and once you understand, and once your ego is disciplined in the art form of managing your Goliath system here, then you basically get to that point where you start tearing down all the parts of you, you start to analyze things more. And it's amazing because what I'm seeing from people who go through this is they go through a period where they completely isolate themselves. And that's part of the process. But then they reach a point of sexual exploration where they're like, let's try sex again. Let's see how that works. And when they do, it becomes this massive question of, how do they sexually identify? What exactly is sex about now? And it's because you're at a completely different perspective, and sex has a completely different meaning. And my partner and I are both there at this point where sex is this massive unknown because it's different. And you go through a period where the sex completely goes away and you think, am I too smart to have sex now? Yes, this is something we've been thinking about. Are we just too advanced now to have sex? Do you get to a point where you just become so smart that sex becomes a thing that only primordial humans or under evolved man does? Is that something that only perspectives 1 through 6 does? And once you get to perspective 6 through 10, you're done with sex? Like, this is something that I'm really interested about, is because from literally from perspective 6 all the way up to now I'm in perspective 10, there has been no interest in sexuality, none at all. And so I'm looking at it going, there's like 4 levels here where sex is just non-existent, because the mind and the pursuit of education and knowledge is just so far prioritized. And now I'm looking at it going, well, where does sex fit onto all this? Is this just something we do between these stages? And I noticed that sexuality is different for perspectives 1 through 4, and sex is different between perspectives 5 and perspective 6. Perspective 6 was a whole nother experience with sexuality. That's when it becomes spiritual. I saw a lot of people at perspective 6 making it spiritual. And perspective 5 was very much wanting, I noticed a lot of people kind of getting bored with sex at 5, where people just were more tuned into their career. Other people were like, they were all over the place. But perspectives 1 through 4, and that's the kind of sex that we see in Game of Thrones. That's the kind of sex we see all over television. That is your generic, it's animal sex is the best way I can explain, because it's really, really low evolution level of sex. And so I'm noticing that there definitely are stages of sexuality. And now I think that's where I'm at right now, is I'm wanting to analyze all the different stages. And I'm wondering, is this an ethical perspective of sexuality? And here's my other issue, is my sexuality was so askew because of the trauma. I can't all the data for me is gone. Like I'm at square one. And that's the other thing that I'm dealing with is I very much have a mental attitude, a mindset of, wow, I don't know anything about sex because I am at like the square one of, wow, and this might also be my trauma healing from my sexuality. I don't know. I just, I am such an out there case because I'm not a textbook case. I really can't use my situation. So I can explain what I'm experiencing and then just compare my experiences to other people's to see how mine align up. So I think that's the goal with my let's sit down and look at sexuality. So for me, where I am, like I went through this massive sexual empowerment of this is it was in 2020. My husband had told me that I needed to move out because I couldn't breed and he needed to find a mother for his children. So he left, or well, I left and I was collecting my things. And I had this realization of, oh my God, I can go to New York City. And his immediate response was, I'm not ready for that. I said, excuse you? And he's like, I'm not ready for that. You kick me out, throw away the marriage and the friendship of 28 years because I can't breed and you need to find a new mother for your children. And now you have the audacity to tell me that you're not ready for me to have sex with other people. And he was adamant. Well, I'm not saying don't, I'm saying wait until I'm ready. And it was this beautiful, defining no. All my life, and I said this to this grandiose narcissist, this was the most validating boundary I ever set in my life. I said to him, all my life, my sex has been about everybody else. Everybody else has cared and put their business into my sex. Everybody else has made my sex about them. No, for the first time in my life, I'm going to make my sex about me. And I want to go to New York. And it was this solid moment of empowerment. He cried, begged, pleaded, asked me to please just wait and think of him. And I reiterated, no, you are not going to make my sex about you. Now, this happened again when I was raped in May of this year, where I was raped and I had a lot of people, friends, everybody bombarding me with, you need to press charges. I had people aggressively mad at me because I wasn't pressing charges. And it became a massive boundary of, you are not turning my sexual trauma into your political agenda. Listen to those words. You are not going to make my body and my trauma about you. That's a lie. And that is something for perspective purposes. When we sit down and we think about sexuality, it is a huge, huge concept that we are not holding ourselves accountable for, that we are not claiming our authority to, that it is not anyone's business where you put your sex except yours. Furthermore, there is this massive, massive expectation that when you get married, especially in the patriarchy and in traditionalists, that your sexuality, the ownership and the authority of your sexuality is literally passed on over to a spouse, so that your spouse now owns and possesses your sexuality, and they are the dictators of your sex. That's sexual enslavement. And believe you me, I know what sexual enslavement looks and feels like. So I'm looking at this whole thing, just mind blown that sexuality is literally treated as a commodity, as an exchange rate of possession, enslavement, and ownership. And when you do that to a person, you are taking away their freedom of choice. Now, freedom of choice is the core to everything. If you take away a person's freedom of choice, that is in essence freedom. And now what you have is a sexual slave. And there's no way you can dice this to make it look pretty. When you look at the raw definition of these terms and the exchange of what you are doing in traditional marriage with monogamy, the expectation that your partner's sex is now yours and you have the authority over their sex, that's sexual ownership because you have taken away their freedom of choice, in most cases, due to your insecurity. The number one reason why I do not offer relationship counseling is because whenever somebody comes to me about a marital affair, I'm on the side of the person who had the affair. Every time. What do you expect? You're like a slave owner coming to me complaining that the slave owner ran away. What do you, of course they ran away. You put them in a sexual enslavement situation. How long do you think that's going to last? About 50% of marriages end in divorce because of it. And every 7 years, in most cases, there's an affair because human beings are not meant to be sex slaves. And from somebody who was married twice in an abusive sexual situation, from somebody who had 2 previous owners, for someone who was literally groomed for sex trafficking and sexual slavery, I know what it feels like. And it was uncanny how much the first marriage, the moment I gave marriage vows, and how much he lorded my sexuality over me. First of all, it was normal in every traditional situation I was in. I got to experience the exact same feelings that I had when I was a sex slave 10 years prior to that marriage. Literally 5 to 10 years prior to that marriage. There was no difference. Living as a sex slave and then living in a monogamous situation with a husband was the same thing. Because at the end of the day, I did not have choice over my body, over my sex. I had a marital duty. Call it whatever the fuck you want. Slavery is slavery. So I don't do marriage counseling because every person who messages me about, oh, well, my partner had an affair. Okay. So, and first of all, I don't believe in cheating and I don't believe in affairs. I ethically do not believe in their existence. I believe in their existence less than I believe in the concept of selfishness. I don't believe in the concept of cheating. It does not exist. It is an abstract that people make up so they can control the sexuality of another human being. It is slavery. So your husband cheated on you? Okay. Not sorry. You can't own a person's sexuality. Well, loyalty. Another abusive term that people throw around to own person's sexuality. Do not make another person's sexuality about your insecurity. And when you lord it over them, it's a start. Let's just go back to Star Trek. There is a Star Trek episode, original series. There is a race. It's the one race that Kirk could not defeat. Absolutely, there was no winning. This massive god race came in and took over the Enterprise. And when they took over the Enterprise, everything just went to pot. They took over the Enterprise, and it was the one episode where Kirk really, everything was just demolished. He was losing left and right. He would have lost at the very last few minutes of the episode. It suddenly stops. And they're like, what happened? They didn't win. Enterprise did not win. And the god aliens showed up and they're like, after further review, we've decided that you are not good slave people. We've looked at your history and we've accounted every situation in which man was enslaved, and it does not end well. We have decided that the human race is not a good candidate for slavery. So we have decided to end this endeavor and leave you in peace. And that's how the episode ends. The entire aggressor just ups and leaves because they realize, oh, after further review, you do not make a good slave after all. We're done here. That's how they get defeated. There's no defeat. They're let go. And It really impacted me because that summarizes us. We do not do well when we are slaves. When we are put in a position where we do not have freedom, we are not okay, which is why so many of us are looking for the age of authenticity. It is actually the journey to freedom. That's what you're really on. You are looking for freedom, freedom from conformity, freedom from expectations, which is why polyamory is so rampant in this lifestyle, is because, sorry, monogamists, sorry, traditionalists, but the minute you treat your sexual partner, your marital partner, like you own their sexuality, like they have to fucking answer to you because of their sexual exploits, that's slavery. That is sexual slavery. Believe me, I know. Felt the same thing. There was no difference. No fucking difference. And it's a really disgusting reality about our culture that no one wants to talk about. The fact that the majority of conformists who practice all conformists who practice monogamy and traditional marriages are actually claiming ownership over their partner's sexuality. And they are determining exactly what they feel is best suited for their partner's sexuality. And they are using their partner's sexuality as a prosthetic to their own insecurity. A spouse is a sex slave. And the best argument I've heard them come up with this one I love. Well, they have mine too. I've heard this so many times. Well, they've got mine too. Yeah, exactly. You think that's a healthy relationship? And we go, wow, one in two marriages end in divorce. And going back to my own situation, because that's what we're talking about right now, is how this compares to where I am in my journey. Is I am just not at all. I don't know. I don't know. I really just don't know. I can't figure this part out. I have this, oh, you're monogamous. You're definitely like, I feel satisfied, I feel sated, and I feel like I've got things to learn. And I can't learn if I'm not out there doing other people. And to get the knowledge that I seek, I have to go have sexual exploits. And at the same time, I'm going, like, physically, sexually, and emotionally, I'm fine. I'm satisfied. It's the knowledge that's bothering me. It's the perspective that I crave. And I'm not going to get a new perspective. I'm not going to grow where I am. And I think that's my problem. I'm stunted in my sexual knowledge because I'm not growing. So I went out last night. I had a situation and I walked away from it going, regret, that's common for me. I always feel regret afterwards. And I always walk away just going, okay, I am not satisfied. I'm not, why did I'm just disappointed. And then I have self-hate and I have regret. And I'm wondering, was it the partner I selected or was it another variable? So I'm going to try it again, figure something else out. And it's interesting because I am very much in a pursuit of information now, which I'm not going to get where I'm sitting. So this is my current endeavor. It's absolutely my current endeavor. So yeah, to be continued. I'll figure this out. I will definitely figure it out. If you love shit like this, subscribe, like, comment below, and let me know what part of the show resonated with you. Become a member of the Healing Garden and grab that integration workshop. That way you can join us at 7 o'clock or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Thursday night. Participate in the workshops, in the communication boundaries and emotional management classes. You'll have access to the Q&As there as well. It's all done on Zoom, online. And in addition to that, we also have Triadic Healing, which is free. So you get the self-care regimen, you get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of Triadic Healing for free. So the workshop is just the way to integrate it all. And that is $140 a month. And that is $1,200 a year for the membership for the Healing Garden. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.